just joined us, you're watching Newslink on DSTV channel 403. Let's now look at Gauteng politics. There are reports that some ANC members want MEC Panyaza Lesufi to take the role of Gauteng Premier. Lesufi was elected ANC chairperson in the province recently. It's believed he'll take up the Premier role once David Makhura leaves office. But it seems some party members want this to happen now with an eye on the 2024 general elections. Political analyst Levy Ndou joins us to unpack just this. Mr. Ndou, good morning and thank you very much for your time. Now, if reports are anything to go by, then it is a fact that some within the Gauteng ANC are pushing for Panyaza Lesufi to become that face of the ANC's 2024 campaign as Premier. And I know there may be several other reasons, but one assumes among them is for him to be at the helm and give the electorate a sense of where he could take the province. Do you think that would be beneficial?
Good morning, Fundo. Good morning to the viewers at home. Of course, there will always be talks and speculation about how the ANC and the government in Gauteng is supposed to handle the issue of Makhura and Lesufi. Firstly, Makhura is no longer in the leadership of the ANC in the province. And of course, there has always been a talk that there would be a possibility for him to leave the province of Gauteng and go elsewhere, and probably national government. Also, there has been sufficient time that has been given to both Makhura and Lesufi to do the handover from the ANC, Makhura handing over to Lesufi, handover also on the part of government. And equally, you would expect that the ANC has to start planning for the elections in 2024. And obviously, Makhura would not be the person who is leading the campaign of the ANC in the province of Gauteng. So anything is quite possible. What the ANC has to do in whatever decision that they have to take should be to ensure that whatever decision they take should be beneficial to the ANC, in the sense that at the end of the day, the ANC must win the elections in the province of Gauteng. Number two, whatever they do, they should also ensure that they show an element of the progress that Lesufi might have made in the last few months that might become the Premier towards the build-up of 2024. He will be having an opportunity to explain his program for the government of Gauteng. What is it that the government has been able to achieve? And that is what Lesufi might then be able to sell to the people of Gauteng.
But then what I'm gathering from you, Mr. Ndou, then is that it would possibly be beneficial that because Makhura will no longer be the face of 2024, then perhaps the face must assume the position now so that at least the electorate have something to actually gauge him on, to say, yes, we saw the direction, more of you perhaps could take us in the right direction. So you're saying it is beneficial in that respect to possibly cut ties and allow Lesufi to actually become the Premier now?
It could be beneficial, but it also has the potential to backfire, in the sense that those that are in opposition and those that do not want the ANC to win might also have to look at the mistakes that Lesufi might have made as the MEC for Education, and then start to raise such issues in order to weaken his campaign. What the ANC, for me, has to do there is to weigh the options that are available. But whether we like it or not, Lesufi is the chairperson of the ANC in Gauteng, and of course has to be the one who is the face of the ANC. And it has the potential to give him sufficient time to settle in that office, understand the dynamics in the office of the Premier, and when after having the plans in that office, then he'll be in a much better position to launch the campaign for him to become the Premier in that province. So in that sense, it is beneficial. But if there are other areas that he might not have done well, the opposition and those who don't want him to be there might actually use that against him.
And even though you do say it might be beneficial, we do know that Panyaza Lesufi has actually said none of this is actually the truth, that there are no plans that are afoot to perhaps have the Premier leave. But nevertheless, I suppose if you're putting it like this, it would nevertheless perhaps be to their benefit. But we do know that they enjoy a very good relationship, the two, that's the current Premier as well as Panyaza Lesufi. So perhaps an unceremonious removal of the Premier might create that rift between them. But if we had to talk about the talks of a reshuffle, what do you make of just that culture alone? Does it destabilize government, or it's to government's benefit when you're going to have the likes of Park Stawu, who didn't make it to the PEC, and Jacob Mamabolo possibly being removed? What do you make of just that general culture ever so often where such people might then unceremoniously be removed from the executive?
Well, reshufflement is supposed to be done in order to serve the primary purpose of ensuring that governance is strengthened, and also to ensure that if there are areas that have been identified as weak links, and there are gaps there, those gaps are supposed to be closed. But the unfortunate part now is that the relationship between the political office at a party level and in government is the one that would actually necessitate this kind of reshufflement. Even though you might have very good purposes and intentions for reshufflement, in some instances, they've got a potential to create instability and tensions within the party. And we have seen what has actually been happening in other provinces, and in particular in Gauteng and in Limpopo, that you don't necessarily have to have those that are elected in the executive to become MECs or to be given responsibilities in government. It is possible that people can still not be in the political office, but still occupy senior government positions and actually excel well. Gauteng has actually done very well in terms of separating political party and government responsibilities. We have had situations where Makura would be the Premier, Paul Mashatile will be the chairperson of the ANC. Now it has actually come out differently. As long as there is cohesion, understanding and working together amongst these people, it is still possible that you don't necessarily have to change cabinet. You can still have these people as long as they still go and account back to the party.
And I suppose we're seeing it in Mpumalanga. Refilwe Mthweni is still there. We're seeing it even in KZN now. It's not the chairperson that is in fact the Premier. And Duma has gone on to stress this, that it's not necessarily something that is a right for you as chairperson to just automatically become the Premier. But then if we had to talk about coalitions, because this is going to be a serious conversation now going all the way to 2024, it seems like it's a reality. It's going to be our lived reality. We've seen the failures of coalitions as ordinary citizens insofar as service delivery is concerned. If there were to be one here in 2024, do you see perhaps the ANC going into a coalition with the Democratic Alliance, given some of the very strong views that Panyaza Lesufi holds, whether it be about racism or those he considers to be racist, whatever the case may be? Do you see him working with Freedom Front Plus or any other political party, or they would really need to ensure that they get that outright win? And not to say that he's held the view that the Democratic Alliance are racist in any way, but nevertheless, do you see a coalition between these two actually being fruitful, if ever it were a consideration?
Well, coalitions in South Africa from 2016 up until now, even though we've had coalitions in the past, have actually taught us that coalitions in South Africa are not based on an ideology. Coalitions in South Africa are not mainly based on a principle. Coalitions in South Africa are not built having consulted ordinary citizens on the ground. Coalitions in South Africa are actually based on what is at stake at that given moment. Enemies are able to come together, only for the purpose of forming a coalition, and equally, there's no stability in the coalitions in South Africa. And my view is that, based on that, political party stance would change all the time. In the previous elections, most political parties were saying that they are not prepared to be in a coalition with the ANC, given the history that they have with the ANC. That is what the DA said. That is what the EFF and Action SA actually said. That might change in the near future. The ANC might get into a coalition with any other political party, depending on the circumstances and the situation at the time. Equally, smaller political parties are always available and, to a certain extent, vulnerable to be absorbed and taken over by bigger parties so that they actually form coalitions. What we should be worried about would be the lifetime of coalitions, because history has taught us that coalitions in South Africa do not last for a period of an administration. And we've seen that in many municipalities in South Africa, only with the exception of Ekurhuleni in the previous administration.
So what would be our role as the electorate? What do we do? Do we then have to go out in our numbers and support a particular party for them to get that outright majority? Because if they don't, we've seen how it works. And I know there's also that thing where some are of the view that, you know what, we want to vote for this party and that party. Let's not all vote for the same party, to ensure that they hold each other accountable. Don't give somebody all that power. But here, it seems it fails every time you expect them to work together.
The unfortunate situation is that voter patterns appear to be changing in South Africa, and we're actually heading towards coalition government. What then becomes my view is that political parties and their leaders should actually assist us in ensuring that when they are in a coalition, there should be stability, there should be transparency, there should be openness. Ordinary citizens should be consulted when coalitions are actually being established, so that ordinary citizens should know exactly what is happening within the coalitions. If there are agreements that have to be written, these agreements should be made public. They should be known by ordinary citizens, so that ordinary citizens should know who are the people that are a problem in these coalitions. Equally, when there are these coalitions, political parties, political leaders must actually focus on service delivery and avoid the conflict that appears to be at the center of all coalitions, or most coalitions in South Africa. Because instead of focusing on service delivery, those that are in coalitions appears to be preoccupied with managing and nursing the success of a coalition at the expense of service delivery.
Mr. Ndou, thank you very much for your insights. That was political analyst Levy Ndou.